What's up? We are gonna do some MTG Brawl today. I think we should appropriately rename the format to MTG Baral, just because that sounds better. This is less of a video to show potential decks that you should be playing or could be playing. And more of a showcase as to this is ridiculous and should be banned. I want to say probably 99% confident that this will be banned. If not emergency banned, then most certainly banned in the next BNR. Just for 1v1 though. Brawl was built as a format that was supposed to be like Commander, so in pods of 4, but they introduced it on Magic Online as 1v1, and Brawl is just insanely busted. I've done four leagues with this deck in this format. There was the fewest Brawl mirrors that I ever faced was 3. I faced 3 Brawl mirrors in 2 of the leagues, and then the other 2 leagues were 4 mirrors, and then I played the full 5 Brawl mirrors in the other one. The deck is really fun for me to play because I enjoy control mirrors, and I excel at them. I have won, I believe I am 13-2 in Brawl mirrors overall. And I've just played some practice games and stuff like that in the tournament room. But yeah, actually, I don't know. My record is different. It's because I've got more losses than that. That was an old spreadsheet. Never mind. Regardless, I do fairly well in the Baral mirrors. But anyway, so I'm just gonna briefly go over the deck real quick. Yeah, so I think that this is a cool way to check out the format. For those of you who don't know, Brawl is basically Commander, where you have a Commander, and you have singletons except for basic lands, except everything is legal only in Standard. Excuse me. And it's 60 card decks, 59 with your Commander, instead of 100 card decks. So it's a really cool format. I like it a lot. I didn't think that I would, because Commander you get to play all sorts of busted cards and stuff, but there's a lot of like really cool decks that you can play in Standard that just don't see play. There's so many cool cards that are like awesome in a Commander style like Brawl format that just don't see play in normal Standard, which is really cool. So that you can check out new cards. Like I'm constantly surprised at all of the weird cards that I play against that just whatever. So anyways, we're going to start here from left to right. So we've got 18 islands. Basic islands are great. You want to be able to cast your Brawl and all of your blue spells. So we won't spend too much time on that. Moving along to other lands that we have here. So we have Mox Amber, which is just basically a Mox. Really what you want to do is if you have Mox Amber in your hand, then you're able to just cast Brawl on turn 2 and then have Mox Amber and like leave up a counter spell. Potentially, there's a few counter spells that you can have that cost 1 mana thanks to Brawl. But aside from that, I mean, it's just gives you the mana advantage and everything like that. And we got Memorial of Genius, which is just come into play tapped and draw 2 cards later, land. Desert of the Mindful is pretty similar to Memorial of Genius, except you just cycle it. Then there's Arch of Braska, which is pay 5 and draw a card. So a really good late game. And then there's this new card, Zulfrin Void, which is just basically a scry land that taps for colorless. And then we have Field of Ruin, and that's to handle any of the funky cards such as Arch of Braska from your opponent's side, or some of the other flip cards like from Treasure Map or from Azor's Gateway and so on and so forth. So, alright, so moving on to the next section. These are all your counter spells. There are a ton of counter spells that are cheap and playable in Standard, and a lot of people don't even realize that there are so many counter spells because they're just not played. This is not even close to a comprehensive list either. There are so many different counter spells in Standard. It's crazy. There's like the 4 mana that that is like failed inspection, I think it's called, where you loot. There's plenty of other counter spells that got cut from this list, and so on and so forth. But these are, I believe, to be the best counter magic suite that you can have in standard. Anyways, we're starting with oops, getting ahead of ourselves a little bit there. Starting with Spell Pierce. Yeah, so Spell Pierce. It's good just to counter something unless they pay 2. Then we got Jace's Defeat. Jace's Defeat is great because with Brawl you can loot, so you can loot things away with Brawl. It's no big deal. And with Jace's Defeat, you're gonna play Brawl mirrors like constantly. So this is basically just 1 mana counter anything, which is really solid in the Brawl mirrors. There's also some decks playing, like Mold Rotha, the new card from Dominaria, and then there's people who play like Scarab God or Tezzeret the Schemer. So there's a lot of blue decks, and Jace's Defeat is great against all of them. And if it's not good, like if you're playing against Shana or like Galta, then you just loot it away with Brawl. Or any of the other ways you have to discard cards. Censor is just kind of like a gotcha, 1 mana counter spell, cycles when you don't need it. Negate is also great. It's negate. Get to counter a non-creature spell for 1 mana, which is just solid with Brawl. It allows you to just like tap out for things and not have to leave up a ton of mana. Revolutionary Rebuff is good early. Counter a spell unless they pay 2, so it's Rune Snag basically. And then with Brawl you can loot it away when it's no longer good. Countervailing Winds, Lookout's Dispersal, all these mana leak type effects. Supreme Will. So Lookout's Dispersal is another one that just costs 2 mana and then you can loot it away later. Countervailing Winds and Supreme Will, they both kind of do it themselves, because Countervailing Winds is almost always going to be a hard counter because you're going to have such a stocked graveyard. But if they're playing like Scavenger Grounds or something, then you can just cycle this. And then Supreme Will is just Impulse, so you can go find something that you need. Unwind is insane. It allows you to do some very funky things, like you can tap 3 lands, pay 2 of those lands to counter something, and then just untap them, and then you have like a bunch of extra mana like left over, so you can get into counter fights, or if they're trying to resolve like 2 big spells on 1 turn, then you can just kind of get them. And then Disallow, Cancel, Admiral's Order, and Wizard's Retort. These are all just your hard actual counter spells, because they just cast blue when you have Brawl in play. So you get to play basically 4 copies of actual counter spell in your deck, which is great. Then you have Syncopate, which is just another counter, and Spell Swindle, which is actually pretty good. It's a 4 mana counter spell, but if you counter a big thing, you just get a bunch of treasure tokens, and then the treasure tokens allow you to have explosive turns with some of the finishers that we'll get to in a little bit. So, and then moving on, we have our card draw suite. So we have, gosh damn it, get out of here. Don't spoil the fun. We have Secrets of the Golden City, which is just a divination, and then sometimes it's an ancestral. Drawing 3 cards is pretty easy to do, and then it just you pay blue and draw some cards, and that's pretty solid. And then you've got the standard All-Stars, Glimmer, and Hieroglyphic Illumination. Those are just 3 mana draw 3s. There's an Inspiration, because we just need an additional draw 3. Draw 2. Pay 3, draw 2. Illumination cycles as well if you need it to. Opt is just, cheap and efficient at what it does. Just get in there and get what you need. Then you've got Azor's Gateway, which is basically just draw a card and exile a card. So this allows you to kind of loot away like your revolutionary rebuffs and all those other, cards that are not so great, when you need to get rid of them. And then when you flip this, then that's when the fun starts, because you can basically tap it to add 35 mana. Assuming you're playing like a Baral mirror or whatever, you won't take any damage like ever. And then you add 35 to your life total, or 35 to your mana pool, and then you just get to go off and like draw your entire deck with Pull from Tomorrow, or just cast like a bunch of stuff and go off. And you'll never lose like Counter Wars unless you just run out of counter magic because you have the mana advantage. Then treasure map is more of the same. Just a good scry, and then when you flip it, you get 3 treasures, so it ramps you, and then you also get to sack the treasures to draw a card. I rarely actually sack them to draw cards. I just keep them around to just have like big explosive turns, but it does help to draw them in a pinch. So it ramps you for 4, because the Cove actually taps for mana, and so on and so forth. So then you got Search for Skanta, which is, you know, pretty straightforward, busted card. Lets you flip it and get a bunch of stuff, find your win conditions, and everything else. Then Chart of Course is just a 1 mana draw 2. You can just swing with Brawl, usually pretty freely, into anything, and just grab some cards. And then Pull from Tomorrow, which is, again, just draw a bunch of cards, kind of mini Sphinx's Revelation, if you will, and you know, just get things going from there. So, and then moving along to the next section, we have our Bounce and other Disruption cards. So, Perilous Voyage is a 1 mana bounce spell. You just get to bounce something and then scry 2 if it's 2 or less. So generally, like if you're on the play, you can go turn 2 Baral, turn 3, play your 3rd land, pay 1 mana to bounce their Brawl, and then scry 2. And if they try to cast it again, then you've probably got a counter up for it. So you just counter it, and then that's pretty much game. I mean, you just get such a heavy advantage, making their Brawl cost extra, and then they never want to really like tap 4 mana, tap 6 mana, etc. to start casting Brawls and stuff like that. This does bounce it though, so it goes back to their hand. But when you counter it, then it'll go back to the command zone. So. Then Expel from Maraska. This is the same thing, pretty much. This is just via the City's Blessing. It's a Plow Under, so you can just put it on top of their deck. Blink of an Eye is the new Into the Royal, so more of the same, except you can pay 3 and draw a card as well. River's Rebuke is just a solid finisher. That's really great against like the Shana token decks, or like the Galta decks that want to just put a bunch of permanents on the board. You just cast River's Rebuke and just bounce their entire squad, and that's usually game. Because it just lets you, you know, they can untap and cast a bunch of stuff, sure, but just getting that one turn where you have, you know, the ability to do that is you know, monumental, especially if you have one of your finishers out, which we'll go over in a minute. Then you have Karn's Temporal Sundering, which is just a 5 mana Time Walk that also bounces something. So, you know, once you get going with your finishers, you can just bounce something and take an extra turn. It's also good because when you have like, you know, 20 mana in play or whatever, just from playing all your lands and stuff, then you can just use it and like tap a bunch of lands to like draw a bunch of cards and then just like take an extra turn, just to have that huge advantage. So you can untap with a fresh hand and so on and so forth. Then the last thing is Commit to Memory. Memory stop you from decking, which is very important. And then Commit is just another way to answer things like just any problematic permanents, and it's also really good for answering stuff like Nezahal or Carnage Tyrant and stuff like that. So, and then moving along to the finishers pile. So we have Torrential Gearhulk, which is, you know, pretty straightforward. It's just a Gearhulk. You use it to flashback a counter spell, use it to flashback a bounce spell, flashback a draw spell, whatever, and then just ambush a creature or just start beating for 5. Then we have Nezahal Primal Tide. This is paramount in your mirror match. You really want to have these in play. Just drawing a ton of cards off of it is great. You just got to be careful that you don't deck yourself, because it's not a may draw card. It's you have to draw a card. But you have no max hand size, can't be countered. Whenever they play a spell, you draw a card, and then it can be, you know, brought back and protected from removal or anything like that. And then we got Dynavolt Tower, which is great for picking off things. You have tons of spells. I mean, everything in your deck is a spell, so you're always going to be getting energy with this. And then you're going to just be able to start shooting things down with it. And it's good against, like, Brawl, because you just shoot their Brawl every time, and they really can't do anything about it. And then they have to keep bringing it back into play, and so on and so forth, which, you know, costs more every turn, and just not having that advantage is going to be pretty, you know, monumental. So. And then the final one is Metallurgic Summonings, and this is whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create an XX colorless construct artifact token where X is the converted mana cost. So basically, like I was mentioning before, you have like River's Rebuke with Metallurgic Summonings in play. So you bounce all of their stuff, make a 6/6, you know, bounce something, take an extra turn, make a 6/6, you know, like draw 2 cards, make a 4/4, counter your spell, make it 3/3. You know, it's just great. And then if you do have a bunch of artifacts in play, and this even triggers off of things like treasure map or you know, like spell swindle tokens and stuff like that, then you can, if you have 6 or more artifacts in play, you can pay 5 and exile this, and then return all of your instant sorcery cards from your graveyard to your hand. So I actually got to do that the other day against an opponent. He cast Memory, and we reshuffled, and then I actually had a flipped Gateway, so I tapped 35 mana, played Metallurgic Summonings. We got into a huge counter fight over it. I won the counter fight, and then I ended up having Spell Swindle be my final counter, and he went to play another card, and I Spell Swindled it, and then I just exiled Metallurgic Summonings after he had played something threatening, and I just drew like 7 counter spells like out of my graveyard after he cast Memory, and we got into that big counter fight. So I was able to just recur 7 cards, and then I had like, you know, 35 mana, so tons of mana with the Sanctum of the Sun to just go ahead and cast everything that I could ever imagine needing. So anyways, we're gonna hop into this queue, and we're gonna play some Baral, so stay tuned.